Hello to everyone watching on YouTube. You've tuned in to the Comic Crush channel, and this is the latest episode of 24 Panels Per Second, our comic book, TV, and film podcast. Speaking of podcasts, hello to everyone listening in on Spotify, Apple, or any of the great podcast portals where you get our TV show, where you get our show. From the image on screen now, you can probably guess what this episode is about for those of you watching on YouTube. It's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, a new animated epic from Sony and Marvel. If you enjoy the show, please consider subscribing and giving us a like and a share. We rely on word of mouth to build our audience, and we'd love to hear from you, so drop us a comment too. Reviews and comments also really help us on Apple, so if you have a minute, please give us a rating and help us build a community of pop culture fans just like you. Now, let me introduce you to my favorite comic nerd, Liz Jordan.
Hello.
How you doing, Liz?
I'm doing well. Lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you back. Really missed you on the last couple of shows, but we soldiered on without you. Shouldered on without you.
I'm sure it was tough.
How have you been?
I have been enjoying all the wonderful things that my comic shop that I work in has to offer. Reading, all the exciting spider books. In anticipation of watching this film.
Indeed, yeah, I've been reading quite a few spider bits myself, and hopefully tonight we'll get to show you just some of those that we've both been looking at. Very exciting film, Liz. I was really kind of keen to see this one.
Well, you and I talked about the first one.
We did. A podcast where we had to review two movies, I believe, because it was a show
double
of highs
bill.
And lows. Yeah, a double bill. One could call it that. More of a 1-2 punch, because the other film we talked about was Aquaman.
Yeah, and I didn't want to give you a 1-2 punch.
Well,
with your
Liz,
dismal views of Aquaman.
I can't help it if you're wrong about films, and. There was one of our sort of long-time listeners, Jason Nat, actually said to me it was the only time he'd ever been afraid for your life because he thought I was going to strangle you halfway through the pod. It was a really contentious one. But what I loved about that was a few minutes after we did the Aquaman one, we jumped straight into the Spider-Verse, and all was forgiven. We were best pals again.
Well, yeah,
or pals at the very least.
Despite your incorrect opinions about Aquaman,
my perfectly correct view of Aquaman,
neither of us could fault Into the Spider-Verse at all, because it was a wonderful film. I don't think anyone who's seen it could argue with that.
Definitely not. Now, will this one be the same? We'll find out. Before we jump into it, I'm just going to give you a quick cast and crew and synopsis. Into the Spider-Verse is directed by Across the Spider-Verse. It'd help if I got that right. Is directed by Joaquin DeSantis, Kent Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. It's written by Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and David Callahan. It stars Shamik Moore as Miles Morales and Spider-Man, Haley Stanfield as Gwen Stacy and Spider-Woman, Brian Tyree Henry as Jefferson Morales, Luna Lauren Velez as Rio Morales, Jake Johnson as Peter Parker, Jason Schwartzman as The Spot, Issa Rae as Jessica Drew, Karen Sony as Spider-Man India, Pavita Prabhakar, if I'm saying that right, Shea Wingham as George Stacy, Greta Lee as Lyra, Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk, Mahershala Ali as Aaron Davis / the Prowler, and Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara. Now, you may wonder why we gave you all those names there. It is simply because they are kind of all intrinsic to the film. Here's a quick synopsis. After reuniting with Gwen Stacy, Brooklyn's full-time friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is catapulted across the multiverse, where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. However, when the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles finds himself pitted against the other spiders. He must soon redefine what it means to be a hero so he can save the people he loves most. Liz, do you feel that accurately describes the movie.
For sure. Yeah, it actually wraps it all up into, you know, a nice little nutshell there.
Which is what we're going to do.
Right. Yeah, because it's a long film with a lot going on in it. And yet it never feels like that.
No. I mean, my only concern is with an animated film aimed at children, it was a bit too long. But you know, I always feel that way about movies.
Okay, well, yeah, this is something that you and I can argue about. You know,
no, I'm not. I really enjoyed it. We'll get into how and why, but I would say that you know, going in, that 2 hours 20 minutes seemed a bit daunting, and it's got, you know, there were a lot of kids in the cinema when I saw it. It's just a 2D screening, sort of Monday afternoon. I didn't get to see it over the weekend, unfortunately. And there were a lot of parents with their children. Part of me was kind of hoping they were all there to see The Little Mermaid, and it would just be me on my own. It wasn't. No, but I've got to say, all the kids in the screenings massively well behaved, really kind of engrossed in the film. So that says a lot.
And that's what I mean when I say that it's, you know, it never felt like it, because 2 hours and 20 minutes is a big ask of like a young kid. And I think that you know, just everything about the film made you forget, you know, that you were sitting there for that long. To me, you know, sitting in the seat and watching it, you know, it could have been a 90-minute film.
Right.
You know,
did you see it at any kind of special screen at all, like 3D or IMAX?
Or not 3D or IMAX. I saw it in, like, you know, basically, you know, the nice screening with the reclining chairs,
nice.
And, you know, and yeah, it was nice. It was really nice.
I didn't do that this time because that show was on a bit later in the day, and I was really kind of pushed for time. So I didn't go for the kind of nicer screening. I'm kind of gutted though, because I was so tired watching it. It's been a long week at work.
It was luxury, Paul, like, you know, only way to see a film these days.
Indeed. Like, I mean, the only thing I feel that synopsis really gets wrong is that for me, going into the movie and carrying through a vast chunk of it, it was more of a Gwen Stacy movie, this one.
I think this one was much more equal parts Miles and Gwen, versus, you know, the first one. You know, it's really Miles's story. This film, I felt like, you know, they kind of gave Gwen a much larger role. You know, she her sort of, you know, life and her internal life were, you know, a much bigger focus this time. And I think that worked. I think it worked really well. You know, I mean, considering the scope of what they're doing, I think making Gwen, you know, sort of nearly as much the focus as Miles, you know, is like an important thing to do. They're telling like a big epic trilogy, essentially. And Gwen isn't, you know, she's not simply, you know, a love interest or, you know, sidekick. You know, I think her story, you know, in terms of the Spider-Verse and in terms of like these characters as comics, in comics, is equally important.
And I think her, like, she's not just there to be fridged off screen, you know, and or killed in a major moment, as previously we've seen with Gwen Stacy in the comics and in at least one other film version. I think that she becomes a character in her own right, and really, I think she really starts to drive the emotional core of the movie almost more than Miles does. But then there is this kind of almost invisible handing of the baton from Gwen to Miles, which I think is really nice, because normally it might be the other way. And you can talk about the sexual politics of that all day if you want, but it was really lovely to see it go this kind of way this time. And I became very wrapped up in her character and really kind of engrossed in what was going on with her. And in a way, I felt that we do kind of get a death of Gwen Stacy. I mean, obviously, full spoilers on this show, folks. We will, as by the title of the pod, we will go full spoiler on this. So
yeah, if you haven't seen the film, go see the film.
Yeah,
and then come back
to us. You can just stick us on pause. We'll still be here. Or we'll just wait for you patiently in silence. I don't know. Whatever you want us to do. But I feel that obviously we have that whole hunt for Spider-Woman at the beginning. And we're given this. Now, it's been so long since I've seen Into the Spider-Verse. The stuff we see at the beginning of the film was created just for this film, right? I mean, the whole
Gwen's backstory, or
no,
that was in that's in the comics.
Really? No. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the film watching audience,
yeah. So this is it was not. So we're given Gwen's backstory here. You know, her comics canonical background. And you know, and that's something that didn't happen in the first film, because like the first film, as I said, is really Miles's story. And here we're given Gwen, you know, in a much larger role. So the film opens with Gwen's backstory, and we spend about, I want to say, at least 20 minutes just with Gwen at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, which was great. And the thing is, as much as I love Miles, and I really do love Miles as a character, I didn't miss him at the beginning. I was really kind of totally invested in Gwen's story and what was going on with her and her dad, and that. I kind of now, it's only now that I'm really thinking about that, how much I didn't miss Miles. Well, and it doesn't mean that I feel that you could have done without him. Not at all. I think he's great in this. But yeah, I just got totally kind of invested in Gwen's story.
Well, I think it was a smart decision, actually, to put Gwen's story right at the beginning of the film, like right out front. Because it does a couple of things. It gives you Gwen's backstory. It lets you know that she's going to be a more prominent character this time, and that she's just as important as Miles in terms of the story. But it also introduces you to her world, her Earth, which is visually very different to Miles's.
Yeah, we're on Earth 65, I believe, for Gwen.
Yeah, and visually it looks like the Spider-Gwen comic by Jason Latour from, I want to say, 2016.
So more kind of watercolors, more kind of softer tones, really.
Yeah, those pastel kind of colors, and it's beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous to look at, as is most of the movie.
And it tells you something about what the film is going to be like, which is that it's going to be visually different from Into the Spider-Verse, which, you know, was visually incredible. And, you know, I think so many animated films since its release in 2018 have tried to kind of emulate what they did in Into the Spider-Verse in terms of animation. But they're in this film, they could go right out of the gate and say, well, it's not going to look the same as that. We're going to do something different. We're going to do a lot of different things, and we're going to experiment and, you know, get ready for a whole lot of visual differences between all of these universes that the Spider People exist in.
Yeah, definitely. And in a way that I feel that there's so much more going on visually, and yet it feels more stripped back in a lot of ways, and a lot of the stars are quite stripped back, but obviously having so much more to work with in terms of characters this time. I mean, I wasn't kidding. That list at the beginning, the reason why I read the cast out was because in a lot of ways they all become intrinsic for big chunks of the movie to the plot of the movie, and in all important ways. I mean, when we do get to Miles, he's struggling with balancing Spider-Man and life, and his opportunities to go on to a university, and he, like the thing that really kicks off the plot of the film is, well, two things really. Obviously, in Gwen's universe, we have the appearance of a kind of Da Vinci-esque vulture, which I thought was great. Like, I really loved.
The character design was amazing.
Yeah. And then in Miles's universe, which I think is, I can't remember what it was, 16. It's not the 616. It's something else, isn't it? It's like 1006. Like, I can't remember the number. There's so many universes.
Okay.
We get the arrival of a character who has appeared before, but not in this guise, the Spot, voiced by Jason Schwartzman, who is kind of a doctor that fell prey to the big super collider explosion that ends the original Spider-Verse. I just really can't remember the first film. It's been so long. And he's not actually in the movie that much. For what should be the big villain, he's kind of not there that much. And he kind of vanishes quite quickly. But he does kind of kick off the entire sequence of events that will kind of really cause problems. I mean, over in Gwen's universe, we get the arrival of Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, heavily pregnant. We get the arrival of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, who's revealed to be some sort of kind of ninja vampire Spider-Man.
Well, I mean, not actually a vampire, but he does have fangs.
Now, do you know a lot about Spider-Man 2099? Is that an area that
I haven't read a ton of 2099, but he has fangs that have spider venom, basically.
Right. So it kind of almost syncs up nicely with Miles's venom touch, because he can, create that sort of electrical pulse, which is meant to be a sort of spider venom thing, as I recall from the comics, if I'm remembering correctly. And those two plot lines kind of converge when Gwen makes a visit to Miles in his universe. And Miles is still very much in love with Gwen, which I really like. I really like their little cute kind
their
of
little
love story.
Crushes on each other.
Absolutely adorable, and that more in particular coming from him, which is done nicely in a very kind of embarrassing sequence.
Oh yeah, where he's drawing all these pictures of him. Yeah.
I absolutely loved all that. And Miles is then kind of drawn into this wider Spider-Verse. Now, my concern there going in was, this is going to get weighed down with cameos and weighed down with non-essential kind of plot elements. And it wasn't. I was really shocked at the kind of expediency that is dealt with. And I think there'll be a great reward for people who, like me, go and buy Blu-rays and stuff, to go back and pause and spot all the spider characters, especially since we get the kind of comic captions explaining who each one is.
I mean, it's, I'm sure if you freeze frame on, certain sequences, there will probably be hundreds, of spider characters. I mean, and we'll get to that. I think maybe a little further down the road, but I mean, near the end of the film, you see about every iteration of Spider-Man, that there's been.
Yeah. And there are so many that I don't, not being a person who's not taken a deeper dive into the Spider universe, as with a lot of Marvel stuff, I just like to dip my toes in and then get out of the water. I'm not really kind of as immersed in that universe as I am in the DC universe. But seeing them all was fantastic. But you worry about what are these guys going? What are they going to do with this? How many different variations of Peter Parker's story can you get?
Well, as I showed
thousands,
you, literally hundreds. They didn't actually bring back some of the characters that we met in the first film. We didn't get any Spider-Ham or Spider-Noir. We get Penny for just a brief amount of time, but I think it's showing you, like there's so many, so many great characters for you to focus on that, we might as well introduce some new ones. And as you say, the ones that you mentioned at the top of the show, who all play big roles, they had plenty to do, and were very important to the story.
We get plenty of flashbacks from Miles as well, and he's thinking about his uncle and stuff like that, and going back to those moments in the first film where his uncle was killed, which I always loved as a variation on the Uncle Ben kind of story, because he doesn't, as I think now I'm remembering, I pointed out at the time, it isn't with great power comes great responsibility from Uncle Aaron. It's
No.
something else, Do you think that this film handles the multiverse stuff better than the MCU has handled it? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, I don't know. I think in a sense, I mean, it's built into this film, whereas with the MCU, it's something that they've kind of, actually developed over time, the idea of the multiverse and how they do it. And I think you could make an argument for either being equally clever within the confines of, their respective universes. I think, because Spider-Verse was introduced as, a story that's going to exist among, many universes, it's going to be done a little more elegantly than what the MCU did, because that was just story progression, and it was something that they settled on when they had all these other things to contend with, when studios merged and properties suddenly became available and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't actually say that one was better than the other. I think they're just different.
And in looking at the film, I think it's one that, interestingly, with that has been, whereas I think the MCU suffered a bit from the pandemic, Spider-Verse seems to have benefited,
flourished. Exactly.
It's been given a lot more time to kind of create and accentuate and really dive into these designs and things. And I mean, it is a spectacular feast for the eyes. We get that incredible sequence in Mumbattan, which is kind of the Indian version of Manhattan, where Spider-Man India is. And that sequence is just gorgeous. It's clipping by at a super fast rate, and you've really kind of got to try and take it in. But yeah, I mean, it's just freaking incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the film itself is just like, it is a staggering sort of feat of animation. Just every character, you could almost say that, like, nearly every character had their own design. Each world had its own design. All the just little nuances that exist, in each world. Some of it is like blink and you'll miss it, or, just subtle, but like, extremely impactful. Like, if I was thinking about Spider UK, or not Spider UK, Spider Punk. And his character design, and how clever that was, because you've got this character who is, he's Spider Punk, and he's like a British punk, and what they did with him was make him almost look and feel like a punk zine. Where sometimes he's got like, sort of almost like newsprint look about him, like black and white, and like sort of rough pencil-y look, and sometimes his look almost feels like something that's been cut out and pasted onto a zine, which I thought was just so clever. And just all these like incredible little details that sort of set each character apart, and they're from a different world, even if all you're seeing is their character design. So yeah, I was really just blown away by how creative it was.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you just can't. I mean, it is the type of thing. I really wish I'd gotten the chance to see Into the Spider-Verse again before this. Because
me too, actually. I wanted to, but I just didn't make it happen.
I mean, trying to find the time to do it has been difficult lately, and because I really think we would have benefited from sort of retraining our eyes to look at the stuff again and again, and just kind of try and take it in and absorb the way that information comes at you. I mean, it's the colors. There's another moment from the India sequence. It's simplistic yet complicated. There's some beautiful kind of emotion playing in it. I was just so thrilled by kind of every moment in it, visually speaking. And I think this is definitely one I'm going to want to take a look at again and again.
I think you'll be able to see new things every time. Like there's so much going on in it, in such a good way, that I think, there's lots of things I'm sure, that I would pick up on a second or third or fourth watch.
Now, the one thing that's kind of troubled me a little bit in the discourse about the film is, so it was announced yesterday that it's become the most popular film on Letterboxd ever, the highest rated film on Letterboxd ever. I don't know if you use Letterboxd, but it's like a social media service that's all centered around films. So people go on and list their films and review films and stuff like that. And I had a real kind of trouble with this, because it's like, well, it's not the greatest film ever, but also it's not the worst ever, and it doesn't kind of just sit in the middle like a passable movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's gorgeous. I loved it. But am I going to like it better than I don't know, Citizen Kane or all the Powell and Pressburger movies?
Well, I don't think. Yeah, Citizen Kane didn't come out this weekend, Paul. So
no, I know, but I mean, I just find it. I think there's a lack of. I think we probably need to give this one a bit more time before we sort of settle on its place in the filmic universe, and that kind of troubled me a bit.
Well, I wouldn't let it trouble you. I mean, it's a new film that has, I mean, there's a million reasons I can see that would be the case.
No, it worries me because it is yet another sign that people sort of my age and above aren't using social media, and it's not being. Therefore, it's not really a big enough sort of sample size of the community and the planet as a whole, really.
Well, I just wouldn't worry about it too much.
I do worry. It's something I constantly worry about, that film education is kind of dying out. I still love the film. I'm not saying anything negative.
It's social media. It's not going to be taught in schools, Paul.
No, but but film education is the education you can go and get yourself.
Right, but as you said, this is people's personal opinions, and that's their platform for it. So I wouldn't worry that.
Okay, Lebowski.
film studies courses are going to be.
I'm not talking about film studies, Liz. I think the best film education is the education you go and get yourself. But I worry that people aren't the field at which everyone is now looking at is narrowing sharply. But I still love the movie, and it is a movie I would watch again and again. I mean, just that going back to that India sequence, which then kicks off the sort of second phase of the plot, the second act, because we find out that Peter stops what's called a canon event, meaning that there's one event that's got to happen in the life of every spider person, which is Captain Stacy has to die, or his equivalent has to die, and Peter stops that. Miles stops that. See, I'm getting confused about which spider person we're dealing with. Miles stops that, and the shock therein is that Gwen was gonna kind of stop him from intervening, and obviously there's a massive betrayal there, and it speaks to kind of Gwen's separation from her father, which I felt was the real emotional core throughout the movie. I actually think that Gwen Stacy's death is the moment she kind of walks out on her dad. I think that's her death. Or when he pulls the gun on her, and he's like, "Oh, I've caught Spider-Woman. Oh, it's revealed to be," I thought that was a very clever way of doing the death, because in a way she dies there. She's something in her kind of goes, and emotionally, she's kind of completely ruined by that moment for quite a while. And goes off and seeks solace in this sort of cult of spider people, with their own mission and their own agenda. And as Miles points out, it doesn't have to be this way. We can do it differently. We can intervene. We can change things. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to destroy the universe. But Miguel is kind of set on that. Sorry, go on. I'm babbling on.
Yeah, I think I talked to a couple people who sort of bristled at the whole canon thing, and I think it's pretty clever, actually.
Yeah,
it's a meta commentary on canon and people's fixation with it, and the idea that, wow, this is what has to happen, or else it's not the story that we know, and it's going to ruin everything, which a lot of people feel that way. But even if you look at the existence of Miles and Gwen, that is the opposite of canon compliance. One of the great rules was supposed to be you're never supposed to be able to bring back Gwen Stacy. She's supposed to stay dead. One of the unspoken rules of comics, one of the, and the existence of Miles, as going from being the ultimate Spider-Man to becoming a 616 character. It's, all of that is anti-canon, really. You can't have two Spider-Men, existing in the same universe at the same time. And I think the whole idea is to, sort of break that down and say, yeah, you can, and you can make great stories, and people, and you can do it successfully. Look, we've got these two characters that people are crazy about, and technically, if you were, a sort of canon fanatic, they shouldn't exist, or they shouldn't be successful characters. And so I think it's very clever that that's, what they kind of chose to really make the big bad of the film, canon compliance. As you say, it's the Spot was sort of introduced as the big villain, but when you look at the real plot, it's actually Miguel, and what he's trying to do that is the real antagonist of the film.
And by extension, I guess those kind of fans, in a way, and I'm not sure that that's another issue that not that I have, but that I can see arising, which I think fans feel sort of picked on in the last sort of decade or so. Certain groups of fans feel picked on. Now, whether or not that's correct, again, is a bigger debate than we can necessarily have on this show. But I think that this will kind of aggravate those things. And in fact, I'm surprised not to see more of that kind of debate going on online. Maybe I'm just missing it. I'm too deep in that sort of echo chamber of people I genuinely like on social media rather than, having to listen to all these voices that I wouldn't necessarily chime with. I think it's an interesting move to make, especially for something where I think some of the choices in this film have been kind of almost picked by fans, and that Lord and Miller and the directors have picked up on that and decided to go ahead and put those in. I mean, I love the inclusion of certain things like the Spider-Man, Scarlet Spider.
Oh my God, I was dying.
Which is,
that was really funny. That got the biggest laugh from me, I think, out of the whole film, when he's like, "Oh, my tortured past. Oh, I'm just thinking about my past."
As voiced by Andy Samberg, and there were a couple of people online today who were like, they did my boy dirty, and it's just like, no, they didn't.
Oh, come on, like, have a sense of humor.
And it's funny because I've been reading not that particular Spider-Man, but I've been reading Spider-Man stories. I'll get into it hopefully from a particular period where the the kind of tortured commentary is very prevalent. I think you can probably guess which period I'm reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we'll get into that. So yeah, I mean, it is a film, I think, for and driven by fans, and I think it shows that those things. I don't necessarily think you should make things for the fans. I think that ultimately the master of any film must be the story, and I think, having tried to write things myself, I can tell, and you know this from writing stuff, there'll be a point if you're writing something where it will tell you what it wants to be.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it becomes its own animal. And yes, part of that is what you've put in up here at the beginning, in let's say Act 1, will feed into sort of Act 2 and 3, and it becomes its own beast from what you feed it. But ultimately it will tell you what it wants to be. You're not going to tell it. And I think that this is very much a thing that's kind of organically grown into its own animal. And I just think it's lovely to see something so satisfying and so kind of, that really pleased the audience.
It actually is like, there's an enormous amount of fan service in it. It's like one of the most fan servicey films that I've ever seen, but without it ever feeling like, oh, you're really trying to wink and nod at me. It's actually really done in a really refreshing way, where it's like, it's there for everyone. Yeah. There is like a Spider-Man that is everyone's Spider-Man. So whatever your experience of Spider-Man is, it's kind of in there. If it was a video game Spider-Man, that's in there. If it was the 1970s TV series, that's in there. If it was a lunchbox, if it was Lego, it's like, it's all in there. So whatever your favorite Spider-Man is probably gonna wink and nod at you from this film. And even the MCU, they find a way to tie that in. You get to see that moment with Donald Glover, which made me laugh. Like I was not expecting that, and there it was. It's like, oh wow, okay, so there he is.
And in even more wish fulfillment, you get him to see him being something that he wasn't in Homecoming, which is full Prowler get up, and that's great. you know, I just think there was so much to kind of unpack and enjoy in the film. I mean, story wise, it's interesting because I felt the film was going to end a bit earlier than it did. Like I kept kind of going, oh no, this is such a great moment to end it, because you know we have Miles escaping the Spider Society through this go home machine, which I like the concept of. So basically, this is the machine that reads which universe you're from and sends you back there. But of course, we're told quite early on that Miles's spider was from a different universe, and therefore the machine sends him to the wrong. Now I kind of caught that just ahead of when they revealed it on screen. Yeah, which I'm sure you did as well. I'm sure you were probably sort of well ahead of the movie there, and loved it. But I wasn't expecting the reveal that I got right at the end. I mean, were you?
Oh, well, that was like that was so great. I think they did such a good job because you know, it's like, and they made, I was surprised, but you know, it was like, oh, this makes perfect sense, of course. And as you said, I felt like, they basically had an ending that was a really satisfying ending, and and place to leave it right before that. But I feel like this was like a great way to leave it, because it's like it leaves you at like the edge of your seat completely, and it reminds you this is not a standalone film. This is part 1 of 2. This is like, and I had forgotten, because it was so long ago when they announced that it was going to be a 2-parter. I'd kind of forgotten that it was going to be a 2-parter, and I think a lot of people in the cinema with me didn't know it was going to be a 2-parter, because there were people who were like groaning, like, oh, like, you know, I could feel this reaction from people like, oh my god, I can't, I don't want to have to wait, and that's a good thing. You know,
I did know it was going to be a 2-parter. Again, I thought that we would end sooner than we did, but was really satisfied with that ending. I've seen a few people online today, in fact, including our buddy Rob Deb, was kind of annoyed that it was a 2-parter. But
well, you only have to wait a year, like, less than a year, in fact, because it's finished. It's all done. But like, they had so much story that they split it into 2 films.
I'm fine with that. I've got a feeling that the third part won't be that kind of tacked on last chunk where it feels sort of shapeless and doesn't kind of work structurally. I think it's going to work really well. I really loved this, like, unabashedly, just absolutely enjoyed it. I don't watch a lot of animation, to my great shame. I seem to have less patience for it than I do for quote unquote watching real
live action,
yeah.
Real movies. Oh my
god.
No,
you know what I mean. Watching. Sorry, I should have said movies with real people in them. And I was just totally bowled away by the film and everything in it, and the textures of the film, the music, particularly because I'm a film music nut. I loved it. For me, it was like a meta postmodern film that kind of not only comments on the medium of its message, film, but on the medium it was born from, which is comics. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that this was probably the most comics friendly movie ever made.
Yeah, I could get down with that. Like, because it really, and in a wonderful way, because you never have to have read a comic before to be able to enjoy it. But if you have, read comics, and if you've, been a lifelong Spider-Man fan, and you're completely immersed in, all things Spider-Man, you will get equal enjoyment from this film for different reasons in different ways.
But I'm not just talking about the kind of characters moments and the kind of cameos and all that. I mean, I think the trick with these movies is not replication, like cloning the panels and placing living actors or animated ones in this case in those panels to walk the walk and talk the talk of comics characters. But instead to use what those panels do, such as offer two different distances from the action in the same field of vision, which you see at that great scene where Gwen is walking away from the band because she's upset and things like that. And offer two viewpoints of a moment simultaneously to juxtapose intent with outcome all at once, and to reshape the frame within the frame. And what animation does is allow for the use of different visual art styles in a constantly revolving pattern. And once again, within the panel, within the frame, although comics may have differing styles on a page, it's rare to see it within just one panel in comics, I feel, anyway. So, I think this really managed to get the medium of comics across within the medium of animation, within the medium of let's say film, because I know there is a big push right now to get animation accepted as just part of the film medium, as it should be. I can get down with that. So I mean, overall, just really kind of blew me away, this movie.
Yeah, same. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. I had high expectations from the first film, and it exceeded them.
Definitely. Like going in, I really didn't know what to expect, but I'm glad I kind of went in with no real idea, apart from I knew there was going to be this Spider-Verse concept where we would see loads of different Spider people. That's all I know. Yeah. I had no idea what the plot would be. Right. And I'm so glad I went in with very little information. I think I watched maybe a TV spot and one trailer. I put one trailer on the.
That's about as much as I watched
on the website. Yeah. And I kind of can see why you do that. Invariably, I end up watching a lot of trailers because I stick them on the website. I don't get that chance not to watch them. But overall, just a fantastic movie. Way up there with this year's movie so far, although I haven't really seen that many movies this year. I have to admit, I'm trying to correct that. So look, before I move on, we're just going to do a quick thing about comics. I just want to tell you about the Comic Crush, which is a website dedicated to a love of pop culture. It's the website that this podcast springs from. You can head to thecomiccrush.com now for reviews, news, essays. And if you join our Patreon from just £2 a month, less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can get bonus videos, advanced looks at articles, and you get money off the web shop. So I sell comics in the web shop on thecomiccrush.com, and you can get money off those comics by signing up for the Patreon every month. You can follow us on Facebook, find us on Twitter and Instagram at The Comic Crush, and head to thecomiccrush.com to find out everything that's going on in the world of comics and movies. Well, almost everything. As much as I can get up there in being just one person doing it on my own. So do check that out. Liz, any comics recommendations from you? Not necessarily just for this Spider-Man movie, but just Spider-Man stories that you like.
Just Spider-Man stories that I like. Okay, well, not specific to this movie. There's a million of them, Paul. But if we were to get specific to this movie, I would say my recommendations of things that are pretty current. There's obviously the story of Gwen Stacy, which we got a little bit of right at the beginning of the story, that first 20 minutes of the film. Mm-hmm. You can read about Gwen's origins and her early adventures as Spider-Gwen in the recently released Marvel Modern Epic Collection, Spider-Gwen, which they've just started doing these Modern Epic collections, which are amazing editions of like beloved stories from the past like 10 or 15 years. Like the epic collections, the Marvel Epic collections, which I bang on about all the time because I think they're just fantastic ways to read your comics. They collect a whole big chunk of story. They're really good quality. They're trade paperbacks. And they might seem pricey at like $40 or $50, but actually for the amount of story you get in there and the production values, they're great value. So they've just released that Modern Epic collection for Gwen Stacy. You can get regular trade paperbacks, got tons of those, starting with the volume 1. I think it is called Greater Power. Miles, the complete collections, the Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales complete collection there. Yes, exactly. That's the one.
My favorite.
That's the origin of Miles. Fantastic book. There's 3 of them. You can get all sorts of great like individual trade paperbacks for Miles. You can read that story in a number of formats, but that's my favorite. And Spider-Punk, that was actually the big seller this week at my shop. That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Really?
Yes. Like it seems like he's kind of one of the breakout characters of this movie, and I can totally see why, because he was just so cool. Yeah, there was recently a Spider-Punk miniseries, and it's been collected, and it's sold out at my shop right now, but we're getting them back soon. If you happen to be in Worcester, Massachusetts. But no, I think that's like just a good recommendation, basically. So I mean, I love Spider-Man. There's a million great Spider-Man stories that I can recommend.
Yeah, arguably one of obviously the great comic character outside of the classic ones from DC, and always kind of vies for that top spot of greatest comic character of all time. I'm going to recommend Spider-Man Blue, because
Terrific
that's a great
book.
take on
So
the death of Gwen Stacy by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. I'm also going to recommend Untold Tales of Spider-Man, just because that's written by Kurt Busiek, who is a comics writer who humanizes superhero characters like no one else. And I do just want to give it an all-timer Spider-Man shout out to one of the few omnibuses that I own. Amazing Spider-Man by J. Michael Straczynski.
Terrific series.
1. Yeah. Straczynski making a comeback soon too.
I know. Captain America. Like, yeah, it's been many years since JMS wrote anything for Marvel. I think it was Spider-Man, that he last wrote for Marvel. I don't know how acrimonious that sort of split was at the time, but it seems like they've made up, and he's going to be writing Cap. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to be looking forward to it. Although sorry to see Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly disappear from the Captain America Sentinel of Liberty title, and sorry to see that title go, because the first arc of that was amazing. There is a review for that on the comiccrush.com, so do take a look at that, because that is a collection worth getting, I believe. Liz, anything else you want to add before we disappear off into our own separate Spider-Verses?
It's nice to be back on the pod with you, Paul.
It's lovely to have you back.
Yep. It's been too long, and I reckon you and I will probably talk about the upcoming Flash film.
We certainly will. We may have a few extra guests for that one as well, so we'll see what happens. It won't be kind of straight away when the movie comes out, though. It'll probably be a few days after, because juggling a few different people's schedules on that one. Something for me.
Yeah. We're all dying to talk about it.
Yeah,
once it comes
something
out.
for me and Jordan to discuss in terms of dates, I think. But we're definitely going to be talking about it. I'm very luckily, someone has sort of squeezed me into a screening early, but not one of the ones that obviously it's already happened. But I'm seeing it just a couple of days before it comes out, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm really grateful for the chance to kind of see it early. Yeah, we'll be back talking about comics soon, I hope.
I hope so
There'll
too.
be some news there soon in a few weeks, if all goes well. I don't like to say too much because quite often things do go drastically wrong. But I do want to say thank you very much to our patrons who keep the website going and keep this channel going. If you want to join them, do take a look at the Patreon links in the description below. Do check out That's Entertainment, which is Liz's store in Massachusetts, the store Liz works for. She doesn't own it as far as I know, unless there's been a massive change in her fortune.
No.
But every week Liz does a great video catch up on the new comics coming out at that store, and those are always fun little videos. I quite often share them on my personal Facebook. They're really worth checking out. They're good fun, and it is good to see Liz flexing her kind of knowledge and expertise every week. And great to have you back here on this show, Liz. So thank you very much for kind of doing this after what I know has been a busy day for you.
My pleasure.
Guys, thanks for watching. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think of Across the Spider-Verse or Spider-Man in general. Talk about Spider-Man right now if you want, because we know there's a lot to say about that, and everyone has had plenty to talk about there. Do drop us a comment, drop us a review on Apple or Spotify, give us a rating, and a like, share, and subscribe. It all helps us keep going. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Liz, goodbye.
Bye.